Next week is the kickoff to Vocation Awareness Week here in the United States, and it's a beautiful week where we try to promote more vocations, not only to the priesthood, but the religious life, diaconate, and also more holy marriages. However, next Sunday also is All Saints' Day, and so that might trump a little bit of the vocation awareness talk. Also, it's our stewardship kickoff week. So a lot going on next week, and because of that, I can only preach for 2 minutes next week. And I think we want to spend more than 2 minutes preaching about vocations. Maybe not, but at least that's what I think we should do. So instead we're going to preach about vocations this week, and next week more about All Saints and a little bit of stewardship as well. And I think it makes sense to preach about vocations today because we look at our readings, and of course we have two main themes here. We have, in our reading to the Hebrews, the eternal high priest, the line and order of Melchizedek. And both also in Hebrews and in the gospel, we have someone being called forth. Of course, every vocation we know is a call from who? It's a call from God, be it to the religious life or to marriage. It's a call from God. We can look at our gospel today, and of course, this beautiful story of Bartimaeus. Here he is on the side of the road, crying out. He hears that Jesus is here, so he says, "What? Jesus, son of David, have pity on me." And immediately, he's rebuked. People tell him to be quiet. Don't bother him. Da-da-da-da-da. And yet, what does he do? He persists. And once again, he cries out, "Son of David, have pity on me." Crying out for help. And what does Jesus say? Call him. Call him. In this beautiful line from the gospel, the apostles come to him and say, "Take courage, get up, Jesus is calling you." Wouldn't that be awesome to hear someday? Someone coming to you and saying, "Take courage, get up, Jesus is calling you." Wouldn't that be great? You know what? It does happen every day. Jesus calls us to follow him. And what we're called to do is to respond in the same way that Bartimaeus did. What did he do? He threw aside his cloak, sprang up, and came to Jesus. He didn't wander over there. He didn't go, "You called?" No. He sprang up, and he went right to him. And Jesus says, "What? What do you want me to do for you?" "Master, I want to see." "Master, I want to see." And Jesus says, "Go your way, your faith has saved you." Immediately he received his sight and did what? And followed Jesus on the way. We too must be like Bartimaeus and go to Jesus, go to God and say, "I want to see what you're calling me to do in my life. What's my vocation called to be? Am I called to the priesthood? Am I called to religious life? Am I called to marriage?" If you're already in a vocation of service, a sacrament of service, then you say, "I want to see so I may serve you even more fully, to see you clearly, because you have called me towards this vocation." So to go to him and say, "Take out any obstacles. I just want to see your will." Of course, the words from the Our Father, "Thy will be done." Help me to see that. And not only to see it, but then be able to follow you. This is amazing. Here is Bartimaeus, and he follows Jesus, even though he did not tell him to. He simply said, "What? Go your way. Your faith has saved you." But now that he can see clearly, he sees the only way to go is by following God, the one who has called him. We go back to the second reading, and once again we hear about a calling. And this is in line of the order of Melchizedek, talking about the eternal high priest. Hebrews chapter 5, verse 4. "No one takes this honor of the priesthood, no one takes this honor upon himself, but only when called by God, just as Aaron was." We could say the same thing about marriage. No one takes this honor upon themselves unless they are called by God. We look at the Catechism of the Catholic Church, paragraph 1578, in reference to the scripture passage. It says this: "No one has the right to receive the sacrament of holy orders. Indeed, no one claims this office for himself. He is called to it by God. God is the one who calls us towards our vocation, whatever it may be. Now, why do we need Vocation Awareness Week, you may be asking? Well, there's no doubt that vocations are down across the spectrum, be it in holy orders, religious life, diaconate, and marriages. They're down. For some reason, people may feel like, you know what? I don't need to do a sacrament of service. As long as I feel good, I'm good to go. But that's not really a sacrament of service, is it? No. And so what we need to do is take awareness of these things to vocations and promote them. And say, look at the beauty in this vocation, whatever it may be. And then to encourage people to look into it. Of course, when we start looking at a vocation of matrimony or holy orders or religious life, it can be quite daunting. And the thought can come into someone, how am I supposed to do that? Me, unworthy that I am? This is a common theme in the seminary. Seminarians will say to people, you know, I think God might be calling me to the priesthood, but I just don't know if I'm worthy or not. You know what? They're not. They're not. Same with marriage. You're not worthy for marriage. Let's be honest about this. Yet, God calls you, even in your weakness. Hebrews chapter 5, verse 2 and 3. He is able to deal patiently with the ignorant and erring, for he himself is beset by weaknesses. And so for this reason must make sin offerings for himself as well as for the people. God will provide. And yes, if someone gets ordained a priest or someone gets married, are there still going to be days where they throw their hands up in the air and say, I have no idea what I'm doing? Of course there is. And sometimes those days feel like they're all the time. And yet we know that God is the one calling us to a certain vocation. I was recently talking on the phone to a buddy of mine. He's been married now for 4 years and has 3 children. I was talking to him on the phone, and he goes, Carlson, 5 years ago, I never thought I'd be in this situation. I thought my life would be all set. It'd be great. I know everything. He goes, I've been humbled over and over again. As he's trying to prepare food for his family, the baby formula, the 1-year-old changing the diaper, the 3-year-old doing other things. He says, many days I just do put my hands up in the air. And I say, what's going on here? How did I get in this situation? I'm not good at this. But then he goes, but I know it's what God's calling me to do. And that every single day, he provides, even in my weakness. This is true of any vocation. There's going to be days when we're overwhelmed. There's going to be days where we feel like, really? I'm in this situation now? How do I get out of this? And yet God will be there, being that guiding force, because he is the one who has called us. So is there any fear out there of a vocation of, I'm not good enough, or I'm not worthy enough? Then we have to look back to Bartimaeus. Take courage. Take courage. Get up. Jesus is calling you, and he will not abandon you. He will provide. Of course, with vocation awareness, we need to promote vocations. And how do we do this? First off, for the people who are considering vocations, whatever it may be, those who have not been called yet, be like Bartimaeus. Pray. Say, God, open up my eyes that I may see what you are calling me towards, whatever it may be. Have this conversation. Don't just assume that you're called to married life. Don't just assume that you're called to the priesthood. Have this conversation with God. Let him be the one who calls you forth. Of course, for parents, to encourage your children in the same way. To say to them, have you thought about a vocation? What is God calling you towards? Another great thing for parents and for priests and everyone else to do as well is to be good examples. You know, the best type of marriage preparation starts when the child is in the womb. The family is the one who should have the marriage preparation. Not when the couple comes to a priest for courses 6 months before they get married. Because the marriage preparation happened already. And it was by the example of their parents, of their grandparents, of their family, and of their friends. So let us be good examples. Same with the priesthood and religious life. Hopefully, we have people who are good examples for us. I know for me, growing up, there was plenty of priests who I said, maybe I can be like him. Of course, we must continue to pray to God, to continue the prayer for vocations, asking God to bless our community of St. John's, our parish of St. John's, so that vocations in priesthood, religious life, diaconate, married life may spring forth and may be a witness to the whole world of the great sacrament of service. And finally, what we must be is generous. And this is for the parents. Be generous with your children. There are so many parents, which I've heard the story of, they do not let their son or daughter go into the religious life because they don't want to lose them. And that's hard. I get it. I understand. And yet, we know whose children they really are. They're God's children. Hand them back. God has a better plan for your children than you do. When I was discerning the priesthood, I went to my dad a couple years into the seminary, and I was struggling. I had no idea what I was called to do. Married life, religious life, become a priest of the archdiocese. And he was sick at this time, and I knew his time was coming near, a couple months from then probably. And I had a conversation with him. I said, Dad, I have no idea what I'm called to do. I don't know if I'm going to become a priest, become married. He just looked at me and he goes, Alex, no matter what you do, follow God's will. Be his son, and I'll be proud of you, no matter what it is. For parents, let's have that same attitude. Go to your children, tell them to follow God's will, and be proud of them. Because what they're doing is they're seeing God, and they're seeing his will. On this vocation awareness homily, let us go to God and turn to him, asking that we may see clearly whatever his will may be for all of us, those who are called to vocation still, and those who are living it out, that we may simply follow his will, be his sons and daughters, and follow him on his way.